Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back from lunch. I hope you all enjoyed that beautiful, organic, vegetarian, and vegan lunch. Thank you, Anne. If any of you are conference organizers, please do the same at your conference and ask for those at other conferences as well. And now that you're all seated in your chairs, I'm going to ask you if you'll stand up for me so we can do a couple of quick exercises to get us going for the afternoon. And if you're not able to stand up or would prefer to stay seated, you can do the exercise right in your chair as well. All right, first up, just to get a little bit of tension and stress out, we're going to do 3 deep breaths. Bring your shoulders up as high as you can to your neck and then drop them. 1. Breathe in. 2. And 3. Now for the next exercise, we're going to take 60 seconds. And it may seem like a long time in the middle of 60 seconds, but please humor me. All I want you to do is close your eyes if you're comfortable, or gaze down at the floor or at the table, and the 60 seconds has begun. So either close your eyes or gaze down at the floor and do absolutely nothing. Enjoy having time to yourself. All right, open your eyes, lift your gaze, take a look around, do a little stretching, have a seat, and let's get this afternoon going. Thank you very much. So how many of you take 60 seconds periodically just to see to take a break in the day? Awesome, a few of you do. It's really, really important for us. All right, I am here today to talk to you a little bit about my exploration of cancer. I have not had a cancer diagnosis. I became interested in cancer thanks to my friend Maura, who you see up on the screen. I met her following her treatment for breast cancer. She was doing some fundraising to support organizations that had helped her during her treatment, as well as to support some of the people in our community. So she was doing some walks and some triathlons, so we started out walking together. First it was for 2 miles at a time, and pretty soon we were up to 20 miles for a short walk just to get out, get some exercise, get her ready for whatever she was interested in. She decided she wanted to do a sprint triathlon. It was an all-women's triathlon, so the 2 of us did that together. While we were training, I read a book by Brendan Brazier. He's an Ironman triathlete, and it was about recovering from your workouts. And since I had become such an athlete suddenly, I thought I should be recovering like the best of them. So as I was reading, I came across this line that you see up on the screen. Interestingly, it is impossible for cancer to develop in an alkaline environment. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know what an alkaline environment was, so I folded that page over, continued on with my reading and my training, but following that, I started asking some questions. I started going to conferences. This is my 3rd time here at this conference. I've been an attendee 2 other times. And I started listening to people who had had a cancer diagnosis, learning about their experiences. So that just led me to read more books. And each book had stories of people, showed what people had done when they had a cancer diagnosis, how they dealt with their situation. And there were so many different ways for people to heal their cancer. And I realized how each one of us plays a role, a key role in our health. Think of the number of decisions you make every single day. Think how many of those decisions have something to do with your health. They're either building up your immune system, boosting your strength, or sometimes tearing it down. We all get into those stress modes where we don't do the best thing for ourselves. So after reading and reading and reading, I decided that I was going to go to school to become a health coach. And I also decided I was going to write a book about the experiences that people had. So many people were generous, sharing their stories with me from start to finish about what had happened from before their diagnosis straight through the time when they felt that they didn't have to keep worrying quite so much about it, that they had a good handle on their health. And what I have learned is as simple and complicated as what you see up on the screen right now. There are indeed many paths to health. Cancer patients and their caregivers have an incredible way to show radical compassion. I was absolutely astounded. Listening to your inner voice plays a huge role in your health, and each one of us must become an advocate for ourselves and others. So what I'm going to do is introduce you to some of the people that I met and tell you just a piece of their story and some of the things that I found interesting. So Bob, who's pictured on the screen, was diagnosed with cancer, and he was very clear with me. He said, "Deb, I absolutely did not change my diet. I didn't do anything. I just went to the doctor, did what they said." So after talking to Bob for a bit, I found out it wasn't quite that straightforward. He did a lot of research on his own, in addition to the information that he got from his doctors. And he did have conventional treatment and is doing really well. But he also decided that he needed to figure out how to curb and manage the stress that was in his life. So he decided he'd leave his job, which was kind of a big deal because he was co-founder of the company. And it was a high-stress, high-growth job in Vermont. And he moved to Maine, where he started a bakery with 2 or 3 other people. Much less growth, much less stress, fit really well into his life. And he was able to immerse himself into the community. He supports the local cancer community center, serves as a resource for people in the community who have questions, and is always available to give answers and help to people. And he has some advice that he gives everyone to take control of their health treatment plan, to make sure all of our questions are answered, and to remember that the medical community works for each one of us. Yes, indeed. And then there are some people who have to go to a plan B when plan A doesn't work quite as they expected. Leanne's 18-month-old son was diagnosed with neuroblastoma. After multiple surgeries, chemo, and radiation over the course of about 1.5 years, the doctors told her that there was nothing more they could do for her son. They asked her if she would consider including him in a clinical trial. She wasn't comfortable doing that, and so they told her basically that she would have to take her son home and care for him as he died. She decided to do some research. She boosted his immunity with organic foods, juices, and supplements. And her son, Drew, is now 28 years old, a college graduate. He's a photographer, artist, musician, videographer, and he's doing pretty darn well thanks to that fierce mama bear of his. So some people also turn to plants. We've heard a lot over the past day about how important diet can be for each one of us. And Catherine was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's a former journalist, and she credits that journalism background with encouraging her to ask her healthcare team 6 million questions in order to identify the treatment plan that was best for her. She was involved with every aspect of the treatment plan and continues to help others after they've been diagnosed. She is a health coach working with cancer treatments as well as cancer patients, as well as people who have not had a cancer diagnosis. And then we have Gina, who was living in New York, having a pretty high stress lifestyle when she was diagnosed with cancer. She decided to leave her job. She moved from New York to Texas and decided that she wanted to have the very best that the East and West medicines could offer her. So she adopted a macrobiotic diet and lifestyle, and she also had surgery and radiation. But one of the things about Gina that I find most fascinating is that she and her husband decided to love the cancer out of her body. Rather than taking on a fierce battle, we heard about the war on cancer that was declared decades and decades and decades ago. She and her husband decided they were going to pour so much love into Gina's body that there just wouldn't be any more room for cancer. And so far, so good on that front. Then there's Ruth Heydrich. She is an absolute force of nature. She was diagnosed with cancer in 1982, and she was in the hospital the night before her surgery, and she knew that her doctors wouldn't want her to be out running before her surgery the next morning. So she set her alarm for 4 o'clock, went out for a run. The nurses came in early in the morning to give her her medication, and they were quite surprised to find an empty bed. So Ruth got in. She got back in time for surgery. She got a little bit of a lecture from her doctors. And after surgery, she asked her doctor how soon before she could run again. And her doctor said probably about 3 weeks. Well, Ruth gave him 3 days. She was out running again after 3 days. And she started doing a little research of her own, and she saw that Dr. John McDougall, who is in California, was looking for some people to join a test that he was doing to see the impact of a low-fat, plant-based vegan diet. She got some more information from Dr. McDougall, and she decided that that was going to be her post-surgical treatment and her only treatment. And that continues to be the only treatment that Ruth has had. She continues to follow that same low-fat vegan diet. She is still very active running. She writes a ton of books to give people information about how to keep themselves healthy through diet and, of course, exercise as well. This woman, Ellen Jaffe Jones, lives here in Florida. She has not had a cancer diagnosis, but cancer has affected her life dramatically. Her mother, her aunt, and 2 of her sisters all had breast cancer, and she wanted to do everything in her power to keep from following in that path. And she had a medical situation, was not cancer-related. She called her doctor to get some advice, and her doctor said, "Do you remember when you were on that low-fat vegan diet and you were fine? Give it 3 weeks and see what happens." Well, that was in 2004, and Ellen is still following the same diet. She continues to be very active athletically. She's a runner. She is in her 60s and competed last year at the Senior Games and was awarded a couple of medals. And obviously, you can see her quote here. While she doesn't have any way to prove it, she believes that her healthy lifestyle has kept cancer out of her life. She shares that with people every day. She's a health coach, a veggie coach, helping people make changes to their diet and lifestyle. So in addition to different paths to health, I discovered some radical compassion in a way that just is amazing and wonderful to experience. Stu was diagnosed with brain cancer, and he went through chemo, surgery, and then chemo. His doctors told him he was fine, go ahead, have a great life, we're done with you, buddy. 6 months later, his cancer had returned, and he decided to do chemo again. After the first treatment, they had to stop it because he couldn't tolerate it, and his wife went into research mode. Kristen knew that this was the most important thing she could do for her and her husband. So she did some research, and she discovered vitamin C IV treatment, which is what they did with Stu. Also changed his diet up And Stu says the only side effects to a plant-based diet are feeling good and having energy. So he says have at it with the change up of the diet. Then we also have Christina Parrish. She is the woman in the background in the lavender, light lavender. She's pictured with her mother in the dark purple. So Christina was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer over 11 years ago. She was told she had approximately 3 months, and she just decided that that wouldn't do. So every morning, she would get up and she would tell her family, "I'm not going anywhere today." And certainly that attitude has helped her a ton. She also has had a good amount of medical treatment. She's treated through Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and she brings in doctors from other parts of the country as well. She has a whole team to keep her going. But the radical compassion comes in with what Chris has done for other cancer patients. She started a nonprofit organization, the Purple Iris Foundation, that raises funds to help pancreatic cancer patients in our area. She lives in Maine, which is where I'm from. She has expanded that so that she can provide assistance to people who have cancer that isn't pancreatic. She has an organization that helps people get outside. She thinks it's really important for people to experience nature, get some exercise at whatever level is comfortable for them. She also has peer-to-peer support groups for people who are going through cancer treatment, and also support groups for caregivers as well. So this is Chris in a nutshell. Spread love and kindness. It matters. We've also heard a couple of times over the past day, people talking about listening to their inner voice. Sometimes you just know you should or shouldn't do something. And Anne is an MD. She was diagnosed with cancer and went through her treatment. And while she was going through treatment, one of her biggest concerns was for her 2 young daughters. She wanted to make sure that she was doing everything that she could to minimize the risk of a recurrence. She thought she lived a healthy life, thought she had a great diet, was active, and taking care of everything as she should. But something was gnawing at her, and she just decided she would take a step back and really take a good, hard look at what her lifestyle looked like. So she looked at her nutrition, and she decided it was pretty good, but she could add some more fruits and vegetables into it, so she did that. Then she looked at her exercise and decided she had to be more consistent. She exercised every now and then, not every day, and not for very long. She also looked at the mind-body connection, and she started meditating. She started a meditation practice. First, it began with a couple of minutes, and she worked up to 45 minutes a day. And for the final area she looked at was the environment. And the environment that she looked at was her house. What was in her household that was hurting her and the rest of her family? So she looked at the chemicals that were in their cleaning products, adjusted that. Some of the health and beauty products in the home, made changes there. And following that, she decided that she wanted to be able to share this information with her patients. So she went to school through an integrative fellowship, and now she helps both cancer patients become more healthy, change up their lifestyles in addition to the medical treatment they're receiving, and also her patients who are not having a cancer diagnosis, she's able to advise them in a much different way than she had been before. So the next thing I want to talk about is becoming a strong advocate. And standing here at this conference, I couldn't talk about advocacy without mentioning 2 women who you're seeing here all weekend long. First, oh no, there we go. The first is Julia. Following her diagnosis, Julia talked with friends, colleagues, doctors, all kinds of medical professionals, did research to figure out what would be the best form of treatment for her. And when her treatment was done, she shared everything that she learned in every media outlet that was available to her. She shared it through a book that she wrote. She had interview after interview. She even went all the way to the White House to talk to First Lady Laura Bush, to let people know how important it is to have that voice. She knows firsthand that a patient's voice has to be heard through her work here with the Annie Appleseed Foundation project. She's helping people share their stories, find their voice, broaden their voice, and get strength as well. And then, of course, we have Ann Fonfa. For decades, Ann has gone coast to coast to conferences, learning information, sharing information. Then she leaves the country, learns more, shares more, puts it on her website, which will be updated this year and be even better than before, and absolutely does everything that she can to make sure that people have all the information that they can have to make an informed decision and to know what it is that they're learning. And Ann is asking the questions that are tough to ask and never backs down from asking those questions. So we are lucky as all get out to have her in our circle. These two women both had cancer diagnoses. One is on the East Coast, one is on the West Coast. Somehow the two of them met, and they forged a strong friendship. Both of them went to school to become health coaches and continue to work with people who are going through a cancer diagnosis, or for people who just feel like they're not at their healthiest. So when people get a cancer diagnosis, they are suddenly put into a world that they never knew what it would feel like to be in. There's a whole new vocabulary with medical terms, a treatment plan that they have to come up with somehow with a group of people, figuring out who it is that should be in that circle. And from the people that I have talked to, I have learned the importance of taking a moment to slow down in trying times, take a step back, and really make the decision that suits you best. And go back to that inner child, that 2-year-old that is not afraid to say, why, how do you know, what does that mean, again and again and again, until you understand the answer to the questions that will help you make the right decisions. So, my advice, stay curious, keep asking questions, and take charge of your health. Thank you so much. I don't know if I have time for questions or if we do. I thought so. Awesome. 3 minutes. Anyone? All right. Well, thank you all very much. Have a good rest of the afternoon.